We will call the Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting for Wednesday, October the 9th, 2024 to order.
So we begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the First Peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation.
Thanks, Jeanette. Do we need a, all in favor? Okay. Adoption of the agenda.
So we just need to move in a second, or I don't know.
Fran, Judy. All those in favor? Carried. Oh, you don't need that item? Oh. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? None. Adoption of the minutes? None. There are no minutes. Okay, so deputation and presentation. Today we have with us Miss Ann Pritchard, the Executive Director of Frontenac Business Services. Welcome, Ann.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me attend today. I appreciate it. As someone who's been devoted almost 30 years to a career in economic development, I believe economic development is important. I believe it is particularly important in a rural community to provide opportunities for the youth to stay or return to their community, and for businesses to be able to provide products and services to the residents so they don't have to leave the community to gather those. A case in point is my own family, most of whom returned to their rural community after getting post-secondary degrees, traveling the world. They came back to the rural community to raise their family, and I think the community is better off for that. They ended up having to create their own opportunities, and they also encouraged a cousin to return and some of their friends. And I joke with my nephew that he's his own economic development team because he's brought so many businesses in and services into the community. I think most of you are familiar with the Frontenac Business Services mandate, which is funded by our federal FedDev. And for those of you who are not, we provide business information, business counseling at no cost, and loan funds to businesses that cannot get traditional funding. I did bring a few of our posters. If anyone would like to take some back, just as a promotional thing, I'll pass those around. We also have to flog the marketing material while I'm here. We also celebrated our 20th anniversary this year, and we produced a publication. I think Mike's in it as one of the businesses, but I think many of you probably got this in the mail, but I'll pass it around in case anyone would like additional copies. In addition to our mandate, we work to support the county's economic development priorities outlined in your charter. For example, the food and beverage sector. The county is looking to increase and create culinary experiences and support local food, with considerable effort having gone into the Open Farms program that you just recently had. Frontenac Business Services strategy to support that is we work to attract and grow small-scale artisan food and beverage producers. Together, we are working on a self-guided tour to support local producers. Another one of the county's economic development priorities is trips and trails, including year-round accommodation. We support that by allowing business owners, when we were doing the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund for COVID, I don't know if many of you are familiar with that, we kind of walked in the gray area. And as one of the business eligible expenses that we allowed for people to be able to winterize their tourism accommodation businesses. And so if they end up paying it back, they got part of that grant. And so we're supporting that trips and trails effort. Another example of working collaboratively is meeting with businesses and hosting business networking events together. This is one of the ways we can create efficiencies in work not only for our own teams, but for the businesses that we work to support. When a business contacts one of our organizations, if they're looking to meet, we connect with the other organization to set up a coordinating meeting for all of us. And if appropriate, we also bring in township efforts as well. The collaboration approach allows us to share our knowledge and expertise and contacts, which benefits the business community. This includes keeping each other in the loop on what's happening and on opportunities for funding and programming. We tend to get different resources sent to us, and then we can share them between all of us. Some of what economic development in my mind is connecting the dots. And I noticed that my colleagues are even using that term when we were at a meeting the other day, but I think that's a lot of the work that we do. And it's invisible, but it's still extremely important to the businesses. For example, last week, Debbie and I were at a breakfast meeting up in North Frontenac, and then after that, we went to a tourism accommodation business. And they expressed to us the challenge of finding a particular skill set as an employee. We had happened to meet an individual with those skill sets earlier that morning who was looking for employment opportunities or small business opportunities, so we were able to connect the two. Another one is, sometimes a business is trying to get into another business to have them sell their product or service, and they're not that comfortable or they don't know the individual. So we often help open that door to have the businesses help mentor each other or sell their product or service. Capacity is limited with existing resources at a time when I think there's a lot of opportunities. We saw a number of businesses move here during COVID. They're moving out of the larger cities, and we still see that trend happening, and they need support to be able to do that. We also, and we've known this for years, but we have a lot of businesses that are looking to retire, and so there's a huge opportunity there for that succession planning and trying to marry up young families who want to have those businesses or people moving into the community. So a lot of work to do there. And then for Ron's benefit, I have to bring up my favorite topic. We need employment, lands, and buildings. Just last week, I got a business who phoned me and they want to move their business and their family to Frontenac, and there's no place to put them. It's a little frustrating. Some of you have demonstrated in the past your commitment to economic development by contracting out services for your own municipality or by hiring a staff member. In my opinion, investing in resources at the county level would strengthen the workflow and create efficiencies across the region. So, as I said, I believe strongly in economic development. I've spent a lot of years in it. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ann. Anybody have a question or comment? Yeah, Mike?
Not a question, but just to say that my business was one of the beneficiaries of the Frontenac Business Services grant loans, and we couldn't have done the expansion that we were doing without their assistance. So I just have to say that your work is valuable. And as a business owner, I know a lot of other businesses as well who has benefited from your services, and they value that a lot. Networking events that you do and the connections that you put us in contact with other people, you and the staff of the county, are very valuable and very important. And I just had to note that for people who don't know.
Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate that.
Any other comments? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you were saying that to find accommodations for the businesses to move to. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Just for someone, like the example that I have right now is someone who's looking for 1,000 square feet to rent for his business. And it's impossible to find. You do have a green building on 7 and 38. But there are very, very few there are very few opportunities for available, first of all, to have available land, because if someone's wanting to start a business and then to have to go through, and I understand, you know, zoning and permitting, but it is a long process. But if you had land that was available and ready to go for, and I've gone through the zoning and the permitting, not the permitting, but the zoning part of it, that they can buy and do their own building, that would be fantastic. I know we had a business 2 years ago wanting to move out here. And I contacted a whole bunch of people just trying to find some land for them to build a building on. And it's challenging, believe it or not, with all the land that we have. But then other people looking for a space to start a retail store or a little office shop or something like that. And it's an ongoing problem. I mean, when I've been doing this job for a while now, and one of the first projects that we funded through a grant program that we had was doing a study with a company called Rayner and Associates, looking to do available land, or like a fractal, if you're familiar with that, some shared office space. So it's been a need that's, you know, needed for a long time. And there's some interesting examples at municipal levels where they've helped to accomplish that.
Judy?
Thank you again, and that from Frontenac Islands, because many of the Frontenac Island businesses have had a lot of benefit from your services. Just a point of the ongoing constriction of traffic and that we have getting over to the most entrepreneurial of the islands, which is Wolf. And that is one of the things holding us back. But I also want to let you know that the film industry has suddenly discovered our island as well.
Sorry, the
So,
which industry?
the film.
Oh,
and
yes,
that-
I know. Yep.
Yep, and getting hooked into that has been very helpful. And that for quite a few of the businesses and small communities and that. And that's something that came out of the blue and doesn't require us to have a lot of land. It really is basically around services and
Yeah.
facilitation. So that's something that's good. And that, however, the limitations of Frontenac Islands truly are remaining with the ferry service, and most importantly to the Wolf Ferry, and that because it has the highest constriction of traffic, and that both from time as well as capacity. So hopefully we can work together and try to get that second ferry running that the government knows needs to run in that, because with that, then we can truly bloom a lot better. Thank you.
Richard, Debbie, and I have worked with the people behind the film industry to help to support them and to grow that business. And he's exactly one of the ones I was talking about who moved here during COVID. And there's still people moving from Toronto and Ottawa and that sort of thing to our area.
I was thinking at the same time as the local that was making the film, we actually had a Montreal crew arrive.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Yeah,
realize that. That's
yeah.
great.
And stayed for several days. And for example, catering for one day was $3,000 for one of the businesses. Nothing to it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Of course, I have to have one.
Of course.
I know you say that every time, and I don't know how you can make that as easy as you think it sounds.
Oh, I
mean,
don't think it's
The
easy.
municipality itself has, in the last year, purchased some key properties for themselves that take tons of reserves. Anybody that's trying to change a piece of property from rural agriculture or residential or farmland in the hamlets, whatever, what are we talking, 2 years, if we're lucky? And so I know from your world, you say it's easy, but for.
I never said it was easy.
Okay, but from a
I know it's not.
municipality, I don't know, we can't get our heads around how we can make that work. Then you run into water, then you run into, I mean, Harrismith had all those properties and then there was a shortage of water. So I don't know. I know you mention it every time and I know I have to say something back, but I just don't know how you can make it work better, I guess.
And maybe that's why we need more capacity in economic development to try and help solve that problem. Because it is a problem if we want to continue to be able to offer employment in our community. Do our bit for the, climate change, so people aren't, 70% of South Frontenac's not going, I just had to put that in, to, to Kingston and can stay in their own communities.
Well, the reality of that, you're not gonna change that one though. I
Mm.
mean, let's be honest, Goodyear just doubled. All of these people are going to where those jobs are.
No,
Like,
they are, but-
and I'm
Yeah.
not debating it, because I look at SMS. And they went from 1,000 square feet to probably 10,000 square feet, and they want to expand. So I mean.
It's like
it-
manufacturing.
Yeah, so I mean, it is happening.
Yep.
I'm not. It's just the challenge of the whole planning aspect of it that it's hard. Okay.
Okay.
Nothing else then? Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I could add, South Frontenac and all of us have worked together with Ann now for a quite a long time, and we've done projects together, and yes, we definitely, our communities have benefited out of it. There's no two ways about it.
About 20 years worth.
Yeah.
We've got 20 more to go. Thanks so much.
Well, you're very ambitious, Fran. Okay, reports to the planning advisory, staff briefings. Says Sonia, but looks like.
I don't have any hair, so it's not Sonia.
have.
Sorry, good morning,
Morning.
morning, members of the committee. So we're pleased today to talk to you about our budget and business plan for the next 5 years, 2025 to 2029. And I'll speak briefly about where I think we can be in 2029. The KMP trail will be finished by 2029 or much earlier, and it'll be connected in the Lanark. And Richard had tourism experts on the trail last week, and they were just astounded at the quality. He can talk to you about that when he does his presentation. The new county official plan will be in place in the next 2 years. Open Farms, which has been a success story, it will continue to evolve and flourish. Verona Housing will be built by 2029. It'll be the flagship in Frontenac for what communal services can do. And to Ann's point, communal services can open the door for new business lands at a better density. And like Highway 7, it's certainly within the South Frontenac area, even in the north, it can definitely open up different densities for new residential and commercial that we've never been able to do before. And then we've got other projects online, potentially in Sharpeville Lake, Marysville, Hinchinbrook, so on. The community planning permit system, which is a major step forward in waterfront protection that we're working on right now. That'll be in place in all 4 townships in the next 2 years, and it's going to improve the approval process as well, make it more efficient. The doctor recruitment will have been successful, and we'll have at least 1 or 2 new doctors in Frontenac County. You'll hear today, we still, in our opinion, certainly my opinion, we do not have the resources still needed to fulfill council's mandate to promote economic development. We're making a request for 2025 this year, which you'll hear this morning with a new funding proposal. To Ann Pritchard's point, I really like what she said about connecting the dots, and it's invisible. There's a lot of work our office does and Ann's office does that no one knows about out there communicating with people. What I've seen happen in the last 10 years that I've been here is that work of connecting the dots continues to increase, and that networking is so important. And if those of you who attended the business awards last year at the RKY camp, you saw the tangible result of the work we do. So again, at a high level, what our department is trying to do, certainly we have been and we will be doing over the next 5 years, is to ensure that the advice we're giving you in the land use planning side recognizes the important rural character of Frontenac, is proactive and collaborative with all 4 townships. And on the economic development side, promote economic development that will benefit our citizens, our businesses, and help attract visitors to Frontenac. So with that, I'll pass it over to Richard. So the format this morning is we're going to present our economic development plan first. Then Sonia will present our planning business plan, and then finally the KNP Trail business plan. Thank you.
I got this tall microphone just for me. Everyone else has to stand back here to be able to use it, but. All right, well, it's my privilege to present to you the Economic Development Business Plan for 2025 to 2029. This is committee, so feel free to have some, if there's something that catches your mind mid-presentation, feel free to interrupt and have a chat with us at that point, because we might lose it further along. And when we bring these to council, we have a lot more competition for time, and we'll try to take in a lot more. So we want to be able to have a conversation with committee at this juncture. So our planning, our economic development business plan, something that is a continuation of the work that we did late last year and early this year in terms of setting a direction that both fits our budget and our priorities, is something that reflects the changing nature of economic development in Frontenac County. One of those changing pieces is the fact that in July of this year, we approved a new charter for economic development. But I want to just highlight that when it comes to economic development in Eastern Ontario, we invest the least amount of money into economic development regionally. And this is this doesn't this is just county level budgeting. I haven't done the research to understand what happens for community or economic development in township levels, but there are most municipalities invest some dollars into economic development as well. So we want to make sure that we have an understanding of what the pie looks like and the context in which that investment looks like. As you already know, we're looking to increase capacity so that we can continue to deliver the services that we've been developing over the past 8 years and grow the impact in our ability to serve the communities as we do that. So the new Charter for Economic Development, this committee is very familiar with. We talked about it earlier this year. We developed it over 2 years, including consultation with the business community, with yourselves, and it was approved by County Council at its regular meeting on July 17th. Food and beverage remains a key piece, and Anne was speaking to the food and beverage collaborations that we do. We really see food and beverage as a multiple assets, both in terms of small scale production that can happen in the county with the resources that we have, both in terms of providing our residents with interesting culinary experiences, and supporting tourism, which is another pillar of our Charter for Economic Development. Economic infrastructure is really an evolution of the last charter, where we had something called recreation lifestyle. We didn't really understand what it meant until COVID hit, and we were like, oh yeah, it means being able to work from home and then get outside because you feel confined to your home. And so we're expanding on that to understand that the economic infrastructure is both a social infrastructure, something like our ambassador network that connects our businesses, to physical infrastructure, such as Anne and Pritchard mentioned, having commercial spaces that are turnkey, ready to go for potential investors. Unfortunately, the expectation in the world today, certainly in Ontario, is that lands are ready for commercial use and prepared, because everyone else is doing it that way. And so to expect potential commercial investments to come and rezone and change the land and go through that 2-year process on their own is a lot harder for them to swallow, and they'll find another place to go. And so those are all things that we plan to work on, including the housing piece, which is brand new. And the housing is something that is aligned with what we hear from council in terms of their priorities, but also in terms of what we hear from the business community in terms of finding places for their employees to live. Some businesses have indicated that rental housing for seasonal employees is very difficult to find. And so we have a bit of a crunch to make that work. So when it comes to economic infrastructure, we we have five kind of goals set out to in the charter: grow and maintain ambassador business community, facilitate small scale economic activities. So we're not looking to land the next big battery factory in Frontenac County. We're looking to facilitate other parts of the supply chain, maybe for the battery factories or maybe for food and beverage development. And we're looking at the scale that fits Frontenac and what we're looking to do when it comes to economic activity. Healthcare, when it comes to an economy, the care-based economy is something that is becoming more and more important. When families look to move to a place they want to know that they've got access to healthcare, daycare, other types of things. Healthcare has been our focus. We've spoken at this committee and at council continually over the course of this year, and we've seen some progress. We have a project that we'll be presenting to committee and council in the new year, where we've spoken with all the local clinics and physicians to find out what kind of gaps in their services could be filled to reduce burdens and what kind of changes might be helped with assistance from ourselves or other partners to strengthen the attractiveness of doing healthcare in Frontenac County. Yes.
I just want to make a small comment on that. I got a phone call about what are we doing about healthcare, and I thought it's odd that a new clinic opens in Kingston unless your address is Kingston, you're not allowed to go into it. Well, the doctors told us when they did their presentation, 60 to 70% of their customers are from the city of Kingston, outside of South Frontenac.
Yeah.
So if we did the same thing, we might not have a doctor's crisis.
Yeah, we might not, but certainly the effects that would trickle out across the province would exist.
No, I understand
Yeah,
that, but I'm
yeah.
just saying, it's interesting how some people can put rules on and other people can't.
Yeah, yeah. Welcome, Leona. And another piece is as Frontenac County continues to lead in the development of communal services, there'll be a role for economic development to play as a facilitator, as a connector between prospective businesses, investors in finding communal services and encouraging the projects that involve communal services, whether they're commercial, industrial, or residential, and that fits that economic infrastructure piece. I believe that we'll be well positioned to even encourage private developers to look at developing commercial industrial sites using communal services, because it'll help the financials for the financial case for them to build a business park for us. So I think, but we have to move further along in that discussion with communal services and demonstrate the ability, but we're here to help from our side of the department. And then broadband access, we're not leading anything there, but we're monitoring. It's rolling out. We're seeing some impact in the county there, but it's something that we always have to make sure we're monitoring as the internet has become critical for both residents and businesses alike. One of the highlights is our ambassador program. Yes. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, when you mentioned you're monitoring the broadband access and that, I don't think anything's been done for any of the islands to this date, and the entire township has been missed on that.
So what I have seen is if you go to the provincial website, is that there is a contract that has been given between the province and I think it's Bell, but I'm not sure the exact provider for the entirety of the islands. So I'm not sure what the due date is on that, but I can look that up and provide you with that information. It's on the public website.
I will say though that well, it'd be nice, but I don't think that's going to be an issue eventually. I mean, they are running fiber down every road that I'm driving on. And so the fiber is going to be there, and they actually are putting up more towers into the system. So I think eventually maybe this won't be an issue.
It's looking positive based on the planned projects. It's just whether it actually happens. Yeah.
Yeah, it's significant enough both on Howe Island where there are actual dead zones, but also on Wolf where there is strong interference from the US side. And
For-
that's, so
For cellular
for,
reception.
for a lot. And with that, the concentration of population within relatively small square miles or kilometers of the two islands, and yet significant population, it should get higher priority in my view, and that we've been waiting way too long.
Mhm. Thank you for your comments. So I just want to, when we're speaking about the economic infrastructure, I really want to speak to what we've been focused on for the last 8 years in terms of infrastructure, which is bringing businesses together, connecting our local businesses. One of the things that we have always been challenged with in Frontenac was when we launched our brand, we said nobody knew where we were. But I think we know where, I think we've done a good job at getting out there and people knowing what Frontenac County is. But even internally, businesses down the road from each other didn't know that they were down the road from each other or that they could work together. And so we've really focused on strengthening communication and connections, connecting the dots between our businesses, both down the road from each other, but across the county from each other. And we're starting to see collaborations from the islands all the way up to North Frontenac, where folks will come and support each other and participate in each other's events and projects. And that's because of the work that we've done to celebrate, highlight, connect, and inform our local businesses of what's going on and what each other is doing. And so I think that that's been a real piece, and we don't want to lose that piece in terms of having a productive local economy. Sorry. So I spoke briefly about food and beverage. When we speak about scale, we want to look at continuing to support food processing. The Frontenac Business Services leads that. They have programs in place to put food processing and support loans for food processing. We're not talking about Frulact or Canada Royal Milk when we're talking about food processing, but we have a numerous local sauce, local honey, local products that are either value added from agriculture or just things that can be built in small kitchens. I don't know if any of you have had David & Sons, but they have like 6 or 7 different kinds of mustards. They have 3 or 4 different kinds of barbecue sauces, and they've managed to get themselves in most retail outlets in Frontenac County, and they don't have a storefront. They don't have a place. In fact, they leave Frontenac County to process their products either in Smiths Falls or down the way in Northumberland at the food hubs that have commercial kitchens that can be booked and used. I think they've used a couple in Kingston now too. But those are the kinds of things we want to encourage, we want to support. They're small scale, they fit with us here in Frontenac, and there's lots of room for more of those here in Frontenac County as well. And then I spoke briefly about culinary diversity. We want to encourage different types of culinary experiences, whether that's eating from a different style of eatery, so a food truck, a restaurant, or takeout from bricks and mortar, or a boat with food, any kind of innovation like that, to different kind of cultural foods. So encouraging the community to explore different types of menus that might be interesting and new for our residents and our visitors to explore. And obviously, small scale farming has been really important to us. We've pursued it and celebrated it for the last 8 years through open farms, and we will continue to. And that's a project that continues to evolve and continues to grow, both in terms of its reach and its impact on local agricultural community. Tourism is our one of our pillars, and there's a real focus on destination development. When we've had these conversations before, we've said we've had to dial back on tourism because of capacity. We're doing a lot in the other parts of our portfolio. And so we're maintaining a tourism presence. We're still connected with the RTOs. We have a couple projects with the RTOs. You'll actually at your next meeting, we'll be bringing an RTO, a partnership project for you to look at. And but what we're talking about here really is building on what the recommendations are in the destination development plan, which includes a lot of grassroots committee creation, coordination, website redevelopment, development of trails. All of those products take time, research, coordination, collaboration, which we just can't offer at this point to deliver well upon. And so that's where we sort of see the use of additional capacity to be dominated is tourism. And then housing's new. So we don't have a whole lot of ideas about housing at this point, but we'll be bringing up many discussions with this committee over the course of the next year. The big piece with housing that we see as a potential opportunity is our community improvement program that we're working on. We plan to bring forth an incentive program that would encourage the creation of rental housing or expanding on commercial spaces or even the use of communal services. There's significant policy considerations because we have to make a program that we can implement in all 4 townships through all 4 townships existing community improvement plans, but we also have to make sure that we are able to budget for that. So we'll be bringing a draft strategy for that forward to this committee in the coming months as well. Yes, Judy.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Okay, I think that's part of the sense of urgency that hasn't been conveyed from the economic development level at the county level. And that for Frontenac Islands and specifically Wolf, where we've actually had put pause on any further development in the Marysville plan because of capacity issues. But second to that, when you're speaking about the development and support of farming and that, if you're trying to get a company over to put drainage tiles into a farm, they're charging $800 boat time. If you're trying to get people to come over to do your electrical work or bring building supplies for houses, they're charging boat time.
The township is charging that?
No, the companies are charging, and that even septic, if you're coming over, you're being charged a premium price to come and do the pumping or potable water delivery to the islands. So it's holding us back from an economic development perspective with an additional yoke. And we need to be much stronger in the support. Imagine if there's only one viable road that drove into central Frontenac and that was a crappy road. And that's the only road that anybody could be on. I think we'd be very noisy, and we need to be far more noisy and supportive because there's a lot of entrepreneurs and 10,000 acres of farm over there, but they're being choked because of transportation. And this ties directly into our economic development.
We pay charges like that as well to come to the north. So it's just the way of doing business.
Do you have one road? Because it's the only road that there is to get there.
Fred?
Yes, regarding the governments to prevent provinces, 3 houses to a property, are you going to expand on that? If I have a property and it's large enough, can I put 3 houses on it?
I'll leave that for the planners to answer.
I know that I'll say residents or the public don't like that the province or the changes of cutting off consultation for development. But I will say we had a project in Sydenham where a developer wants to build 6 rental units on 2 stories on municipal water in the hamlet, and everybody's opposed to it. The only good part of it was before it had to go to the land tribunal, the province changed the rules and cut it off. And that person already says, I have a 2-year waiting list of people who have already called me to tell me that's where I want to rent. So I don't know how people want to get their heads around it, but if you want to do these things, somehow residents have to change their opinions on some things too.
There certainly is an education. If we want housing, we have to think about how our communities are going to change to take that in. for sure. Where the housing approach that we've had isn't working. And that's certainly why we would be promoting a mix of different types of housing uses. And that's why we're so excited about communal services. Something else that our department does a lot of is writing grants or supporting other organizations in grants. And I just want to highlight in the last 3 years, on average, we've secured almost $250,000 in grants for our various programs in tourism or trails development projects. And we continue to secure grants every year to support our efforts. Anything we do, even when we're asking for additional capacity in our budget, we're always trying to leverage what resources we have through our partnerships, through grants, and through other mechanisms to make sure that we're pushing the county dollars as far as we possibly can. Any questions about our business plan before I get into the specifics of our project proposal for a community development officer? Okay. We're just going to switch slideshows here. On my hair, on my forehead, it makes me look stressed. So I could have wore beachwear today. That would have made it feel better. But the so just as a preamble, in terms of the community development officer position, we understand like it's tough for council to make decisions. We know that this committee supported the community development officer position last year, and but we have to make sure that we try to find a way that we can bring it in that is sustainable from a budgetary standpoint. And so that's essentially what we're looking at when we look at this process and this project proposal, where we intend to incrementally increase the budget for the Economic Development Department, so that in 3 years' time we have an operating budget that can support a community development officer, but it keeps the increases and the ability to take on other costs that are supported with healthcare in Frontenac. Our paramedics in our long-term care homes both also need to be looked at when our county council is looking at budgets, and it's hard to make those kinds of decisions. I can't seem to make it move. There we go. Thank you so much. So in 2016, with the assistance from the Rural Economic Development Program, we created our first community development officer position. They led numerous projects that we continue today, and that position continues today. We have Debbie here, who fulfills that position and carries out and stewards multiple initiatives that started then and have started since then. So the Brand Ambassador Program and Open Farms are two things that we've already talked about during this meeting, but there were numerous other projects, such as for a time we had a ferry by foot tourism program encouraging people to walk on the ferry. Prior to COVID, we had a project that was focused around accommodations and understanding the accommodations in Frontenac. In fact, that accommodation review project laid the basis for developing the destination development plan, because it was a recommendation of the accommodation review. And so all of the things that sort of started as kernels and seeds have continued to grow and have continued to have an impact in Frontenac. And most folks who are coming to us from a tourism standpoint constantly refer to the accommodation review that we conducted in 2017, which is almost, it's getting older. And so, but I don't think the recommendations are out of date yet. The responsibilities of our department have grown. We have key areas of growth. I just spoke about how tourism has grown. It continues to be something as we grow the ambassador program. We hear more of a need for tourism support. The more businesses that we connect with and service, the more time we spend connecting with and servicing businesses. Open Farms has evolved from something that was a one weekend led by us with a little bit of help to a four-way partnership with South Frontenac, Tourism Kingston, and the City of Kingston. Managing that partnership requires additional capacity. The scope, 6 weeks, different. We've brought in farmers markets. We've brought in culinary experiences. It's a much bigger program than it was when it began. Maybe less intense on one weekend, which was overwhelming for some of our farms. And then trails. When in 2016, when we brought in the community development officer, we had about 45 kilometers of trails, and by the end of this month, we'll have 78 operating. And we have over 200,000 visits to the trail each year, with about 90,000 people visiting our trail each year right now, according to mobile data. And so all of that success brings more capital management, operational management, partner management. So we work with 2 ATV clubs, we work with 2 snowmobile clubs, we work with numerous passionate trail ambassadors who are on our trail every day. And so we have to look at supporting that. I'm actually, to be honest, one of the few municipal staffers, maybe besides Jeanette, who goes to these meetings, council meetings, to accessibility meetings. And I also have been starting to attend committee meetings at the township level for the economic development committees and everything. So we also have an administrative burden that has grown since 2016. Yes.
On the open farms, just a comment.
Yeah.
I know that you said it's way less intense and it's taken the pressure off of one weekend. But in my just my own feeling, I don't know if it's the same success though, because it's spread out so far. I don't even know where they are or what I was gonna go to. I mean, I'll take an example like the farmer's market in Harrismith. Great, works fantastic. I probably went every week, but it just seems like every week the attendance is less. And I don't know if it's because it's there all the time, if it's an oversaturation. I know it's a lot of work for the people that go there. So I don't know if it should be every week. And then when you take open farms and you spread it over 2 months or a month, you lose the focus of what open farms was too. So that's just a comment on how it feels to me anyway.
I appreciate that comment. And that's certainly something we struggle with because most of our farms are fairly small, and during harvest season don't really have time to invite people out to their farm or to do programming. And if we pick one specific weekend, that takes 50% of them out of the ability. Also, by expanding it, we were able to incorporate plowing matches and that sort of thing in terms of their dates as well. But you're not wrong either. It's like having a centralized focus of attention for marketing is a lot easier, but is a lot more difficult for the partners in the farms that we're working with. And we have that conversation with the farms every year.
I think it might be worthwhile to survey the marketing groups at, for example, at the Wolf Island Market and that, which survived the ferry not being in the village for almost 4 years and has certainly continued in that. But I know it's one thing to go on the Saturday and that the market's open, but there's lots of sales that go on other than that. People are putting in their orders saying, I've got an event coming, I won't need this, that, and the other thing. So I think to get the best data, we need to actually capture these markets before they shut down for the winter, because the outdoor markets especially probably won't be continuing very strongly. But let's find out, and that whether or not they are growing or whether or not they're diminishing, because on the island market, I wouldn't say that they're diminishing at all. And in conjunction with that, there's a dedicated wall area at Fargo's and that for island produce and that, whether it's the jams, the honey, the maple syrup, whatever, and that, and it's sought after. And that, so anyways, I think we should survey them.
And we are we're surveying all of our partners for open farms at the moment. We'll be bringing the results of those surveys and those discussions to this committee to discuss where we should go with our open farms efforts in the future. And I think there's going to actually be some interesting decisions that we have to make and discussions to have about what our role is in promoting local agriculture, and is it this event or does this event look differently and become more of a philosophy going forward in terms of supporting agriculture? So we have a lot of discussion that we think we'll be bringing forward based on some of the preliminary conversations we've been having with market vendors and with farms and with some of our culinary partners. But getting back to my presentation, to the Destination Development Plan, I talk about this all the time. A number of initiatives associated with the Destination Development Plan require its own leadership. It was approved by Council in 2022. We have not been able to dedicate resources to the delivery of that plan since then. And then I've spoken at length about the charter in the business plan. So I just want to point out that some of the priorities that we're going to see an increased attention from our team include housing, healthcare, and tourism going forward from 2024. And so we're going to have to continually rebalance where our attention is if we don't have additional capacity. And this is County Council Strategic Priority number 2. It was set in last summer in 2023. And there's significant economic development goals set by County Council to be delivered upon. Most of those are in alignment with what we've got in the Charter for Economic Development, and we want to see, we want to have the ability to pursue those goals going forward. This committee has endorsed it, the idea of having a community development officer already. So I don't really want to preach to the choir too much, but I want to talk about our planned approach here. Oh, I guess I missed some fonts. Brianna, I'll fix those for council. I got almost all the fonts in accessible format, but those sneaky ones got in here. Anyway, so our plan is to do an annual increase to our budget over 3 years. What that allows us to do is set aside some money in 2025 that we can add to the budget increase in 2026 to start the new position. In 2027, the increase would then allow us to have the capacity to carry that position forward. And so that's sort of how we would spread it out. And it would mean less than a much lower impact in each year's levy as we go forward. So a 0.34% impact on the county levy to residents instead of closer to a full percentage impact if we were to take on a position in 1 year and budget for that. So that's our plan to be respectful. To be respectful of the taxing implications of expanding our department, but also by delivering on the objectives that we have set as a county, as a department for doing economic development. We know that having a second team member has had a huge impact in our ability to collaborate and work with partners, and having a third would probably just allow us to be more present across the county and with our external partners and see more benefits because of the capacity that we have. Any questions about our project proposal from the committee?
Judy?
Thank you for the presentation, but I'm still of the opinion that we're being light on investing in economic development for this position. And that I think we should have got on the bandwagon for it last year. And this delays it basically for a second year because we're being very cautious about it. But not all of the townships apparently count on economic development through the county in that. And we understand South Frontenac has a separate fund that gives to Kingston. towards economic development?
We partnered on a project with the city of Kingston. Yes, we did.
And there
But we
was-
still our economic development is still the county of Frontenac.
So there wasn't 20,000 that you paid towards City of Kingston towards the economic development?
Well, could have been. Sure. I know it was one project working with the city of Kingston on exploring the closeness of the two. And yes, we did contribute funds to that.
It's not ongoing.
No, it was not ongoing.
So I reiterate the point that all the evidence, even last year, pointed towards we needed to increase our funding for economic development for the benefit of all the townships across the way. Yeah, and that's why I'm questioning this now that we're spreading it out over 2 years. I honestly think it should be brought back full circle this year and that to get that person in place. I think the payback across the townships can be higher than waiting another 2 years.
Leona, I've been waiting all day to say Leona because I made sure I had it here.
Right. Yeah, you practice.
Yeah. Payback. I think that's a critical thing in your presentation, to note. I know I'm biased in this conversation from a marketing standpoint, but there are a couple of things that I think have helped in the past where I worked is showing payback in a very specific financial way, but also in the terms of comparing yourself, as you did in one other presentation for us, what Prince Edward County's doing, other counties are doing, and what their staffing is compared to what their budget is. And then going a different step, and maybe this is wrong, but in the private sector, comparing yourself to another company that says, this is how much they spend of their budget on marketing over their sales. And I know you can't necessarily do that in this type of environment, but it's very impactful to make some kind of correlation that way. I'm not saying that you haven't looked at it that way. I just don't see it in your presentation. So I just would make that comment.
Thank you.
And I'm not trying to be negative on anything, but I just know that when it leaves here and goes to budget, I know budget's gonna be crazy. And so it's easy always to say that, yes, they're great ideas. I agree with everybody. I'm not saying they aren't. But then when you start looking at almost double-digit budgets, you're gonna say, okay, well now, what happens, right? What happens? So there's only so much that people are gonna wanna tolerate too, right? So anyway, it's gonna be tough. Jim?
I'm just wondering, Richard, if there's an opportunity for you to look at the Frontenac Service Corporation, who will be looking at spending some money on some marketing, and maybe that could help bring your position forward sooner. I'm not sure that that's been discussed in any detail, Madam President, of that committee yet, but it's something that will be coming up over the course of the next year to do marketing. And I mean, if we can do that through your groups, and rather than spending money somewhere else, it might be a way of taking part of the funds now and getting that position filled sooner.
Okay, thank you. Kevin's here and making notes. That's great.
Judy?
I think one of the key pieces that caught my attention in your presentations was regarding Halliburton, which has about 2/3 of the population as what Frontenac County has. And they spend basically another third more than what we spend on economic development. They're pretty shrewd in that, and I think we have actually better resources to advertise and develop than what they actually have. They do have some location close to Toronto. We have Ottawa in the US very close by. And I really think that we need to make sure that we contribute enough to get the best bang for the buck.
But to Leona's point though, if there's a way to measure it, maybe Halliburton is spending 3 times as much, but maybe they're not gaining as much. Right? So if, and I know that's hard to measure, there's all those intangibles that you don't know about. But it's easy to say they're spending 3 times as much, but if they haven't attracted anybody more than what we have, then it's not a value, right? So if there's a way to mark the value of it, of course, but anyway.
No,
Go ahead.
that's, and I think, most of the comparators that I have on the screen in the business plan, do their tourism in-house, but many, have an external partner, a not-for-profit, that does tourism in support of their region as well. So we used to have the Land O'Lakes in Frontenac County. We no longer have that organization to lead tourism. But there are other opportunities along those lines for us to consider from a funding perspective. So we could look at other types of funding for our municipalities, and I think that maybe we'll bring some ideas forward to this committee in the new year.
Any other questions or comments for Richard? Seeing none? Thank you.
I'll be back.
Now we're at Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee, Planning Development Business Plan. And this looks like, yes.
It's me this time, thank you. And unlike Richard, I am gonna have to stand back and maybe tilt this to the side a little bit and hopefully don't turn my head and smack the microphone, so. But thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's my pleasure to be able to present to you this morning the budget and business plan for the Planning Services Department. I'm going to speak first about sort of the regional projects that we're working on that benefit and impact the whole county. I'll speak a little bit about what we are working on and planning on working on for our townships. Speak a little bit about the development approvals process and the volume of applications we've been getting. And then finally, as always, we talk a little bit about our resources, our staffing, and some of the intangibles and unknowns that we face that can impact our timeline and our resources. So first up is the Community Planning Permit System, or the CPPS, which we have talked about before. So it is underway. We are hoping in the next few weeks to have a first draft of the template for staff to look at. And then we will be working on a plan with the consultant to make some revisions and then eventually roll it out to the public for them to have an opportunity to comment on. But as a reminder, this is a different type of planning tool that combines zoning, minor variances, and site plan control, along with the ability to control site alteration and the removal of trees on shorelines into one planning tool. And the work we're doing right now, the county will not be passing any bylaw. What we're working on is a template of a bylaw. And once the template is complete, we will ask this committee to basically accept it in fulfillment of the terms of the contract, and then have it passed on to each of the townships. So the majority of the work on the template will wrap up hopefully in the early part of 2025. And then we will be working with staff from each of the townships to coordinate how the bylaws get administered, and then what each township wants to do to that template. Most townships may not want to take exactly what's in that template, but they'll have 90 to 95% of what they need in there, and then they tweak it to meet the needs of their specific community. So we see probably 2025 into 2026 as all of the implementation for this new tool, which is going to offer better waterfront and shoreline protection, and is also going to hopefully offer some efficiencies in terms of the development approval process, because each council can decide on sort of a permitting tier, where some permits that are very simple and straightforward can actually just be issued at the staff level, saving only the more complicated and complex ones that come to council level. Communal services is still a large piece of the work that our department is assisting with. We did an amendment to the county official plan with respect to communal services, and we are now in the process of going out to each of the townships and having an initial meeting with the councils about them needing to do engagement within their own community and have a conversation about how do they want to grow and how do they want to use communal services within their community. We're providing ongoing support for the Municipal Services Corporation and continuing to do some advocacy work and some presentations. So recently, Mr. Gallivan was at the Ontario East Municipal Conference with a gentleman from Newterra, and they did a joint presentation at that conference about the Frontenac Communal Services Project. And I think it was really well received because we had that technical expertise there to answer those technical questions as well. So that work continues. We are looking ahead to doing an update to the county official plan. It was adopted back in 2014 and approved by the province in 2016. So we are looking to start that update process in 2026. And we are working on putting together a work plan for that by the end of the year. So what I can say now is there is some important background information that we need for that update. And that's, I'll show that in my next two slides. The first would be the natural heritage strategy. So the budget for this project was approved for 2023. So we do have that money secure. We are moving ahead with that. We have had delays in starting that because of staff workload, but we are anticipating that, we will be putting out a request for proposals either the end of this year, beginning of next year, and that the majority of the work for that will be done next year. And the work that is done through that strategy will be a real cornerstone piece for our official plan, just because of the significance of natural heritage in the community. Yeah.
If that was approved in 2023, is the budget that was approved still gonna be able to do it? Oh, Joe's nodding yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the approval, it wasn't something that came from the tax levy. It was from the sustainability reserve. So it's already been planned for, and it's kind of just holding right now. The other piece that we need for the official plan update is an update to our population, employment, and housing projections. So they were last done in 2020 based on the 2016 census data. They're done every 5 years to coincide with the release of census data from Statistics Canada. And it provides us with really important information about the community, which is why it's a key component of the official plan update. And we know that there have been significant changes in population, in the way in which people live and work, and is ever since the pandemic. So the project proposal that I have coming after this has a bit more detail because it's specific to this study. Other items that we have that we will be working on besides the formatting of my slides for this presentation, which has continued to be a bit of a, bless you, a bit of a challenge. For some reason, we are going to be working with Richard and Debbie on some rural business and home industry policies. So we have a lot of large rural properties in the county that we feel there's an opportunity for some enhanced business opportunities. So we have each official plan and each of the township zoning bylaws have policies and provisions specifically about home occupations. But traditionally in planning and in zoning, home occupations are to take place in the home. And they're supposed to be secondary to the house being the primary residence of the person doing the business. But with large properties, extra outbuildings, there's an opportunity, we think, to expand on the policies in the zoning and to allow for some expanded home occupations, some home industries. And so that is work that we are planning on doing in-house with our economic development side of our team. And I have no real timing on it. It's going to be one of those, we're going to work away at it. And with the intent will be to include those updated policies, if not as a separate amendment, as part of the official plan update. And they will be relatively high level to give direction. And then ultimately it'll be up to each township to decide on the details of what they want to put in their official plan and their zoning. But we want to do the research, and we want to provide some guidance in the county official plan as part of that next update. And also just to put this on county councils and the committee's radar within our 5-year business plan is that we are going to be bringing a future project proposal forward to do an archaeological master plan. So there is a requirement at the provincial level for the protection of archaeological resources. But what we don't have is we don't have a lot of information about where those resources are located. So an archaeological master plan is done in order to identify areas of, well, either areas of known archaeological sites, but also areas of high potential where additional study is needed before somebody would be allowed to do development. So that is something that we feel is really very important given, the increase in the collaboration with First Nations communities, and with, the amount of lakes and historic highways that we have it's something that we feel is important, and we're sort of right now earmarking it for 2027, 28. I would do it, next year, but again, we're trying to plan this out strategically in terms of our resources as well as the financial resources of the county. In terms of township projects at the township level, I'm going to speak to projects that we're working on for all of the townships. And I know Fred had asked about additional residential units, so I'll speak about that here. So last year, South Frontenac did amendments to their official plan and to their zoning bylaw, specifically to deal with the requirement for additional residential units. The province has certainly been pushing that as ways in which to increase the housing supply, or at least increase housing options. So our team, because we do the planning for the other 3 townships, we are going to be doing a similar exercise with each of them. We're starting in North right now. We actually met with the Economic Development Task Force in North last week. They have a sort of a subcommittee for housing. So we had a really good meeting with them. We kind of did a little bit of a planning 101 and some background on the additional residential units. But so right now we are doing some research. We're doing that sort of on the county time. And then when we come to each township, that'll be sort of the township service part of each of the amendments. But we're trying to do the background work because it's going to benefit all of the townships. The biggest piece, of course, is going to be servicing, both for water and for wastewater. And so those are going to be some of the key policies. We're going to probably have to create, I know South did this, City of Kingston has it, but basically standards for development in the rural area on private services. And what that standard is that you have to meet, particularly as you start to add more dwellings. That's okay. But particularly as you add more people or more units onto a property, what does that do to your well supply, for instance, or your septic system, and also the impact that you can have potentially on surrounding wells. So requirements for pump tests. So that is something that is ongoing. We participated when South Frontenac did their amendment, so we've got their experience to learn from, and so we're busy doing that for the other 3 townships. As I mentioned too, there will be the implementation of the CPPS project that will involve all the townships, which we will be assisting with in some capacity, and probably helping and learning the whole administrative side of how things will work. And also timing as to who's going to go first, because we have committed to doing the mapping for this project, and we can't ask GIS to do all 4 townships at the same time. So we're going to have to work collaboratively to figure out a schedule for when everything gets implemented. In terms of individual townships, we are looking ahead for North Frontenac to be updating having their 10-year official plan update in 2027, and then their zoning bylaw in 2028 to 2029. In Central Frontenac, we still have the redevelopment of the former school site on Charlotte Lake, which is ongoing. We had a meeting with their housing committee, I think, but last week as well, and we'll be going back at the end of the month to sit down with them to talk about a preliminary list of potential or permitted uses for the site that can be used as sort of a starting point as they consider doing the environmental assessment process for development of services on that site. In South Frontenac is nearing the end of the creation of their new official plan. So we have been involved in that. We are waiting on some changes that the township staff are making, and we'll be reviewing that document. Ultimately, County Council, this committee will see the final document, and it will ultimately be County Council that does the approval once it's adopted by township staff. Our preferred path forward is that we continue to work with township staff to make sure that by the time their township council adopts the plan and then it comes to county council, there's a very short turnaround time and no modifications. So that's our preferred path forward with that. So you will probably see that document in the not too distant future. Once the new official plan is in place, we are intending on having some discussions with the township about delegating the approval of plans of subdivision and condominium to the township. They now have a very well-staffed, robust planning department, and I think it's something that they can certainly handle once they have everything they need in their new official plan and start their work on their zoning bylaw. In terms of Frontenac Islands, we had some design standards done by a student group that we were reviewing. We also have to go back and look at the zoning for Marysville as well. Frontenac Islands is also due for a new official plan and a new zoning bylaw, but timing for that will be dependent on the direction that we get from the Township Council. And in terms of development approvals at the county level, applications for plans of subdivision and condominium have been relatively slow. Most of the recent applications that we've had have been for final approval of draft plan or extensions of draft plan approval. So it's really hard to predict what that future level of applications is going to be. But we do expect that with communal servicing coming online, with the Municipal Services Corporation being available, that we will see an increased interest at some point in the not too distant future. And as I just mentioned, we are looking, once South Frontenac has their new official plan in place, potentially delegating those approvals to them for them to do at the township level, which in turn would free up more time for the county planning staff to address any of those types of proposals that come up in the other 3 townships. So it will help balance that future workload. Just briefly, in terms of township planning hours here, the numbers of hours obviously peaked during the pandemic, as we have discussed in the past. They started to decline a little bit, and I would say, but I don't think that we're going to reach pre-pandemic levels. I think we've been found as a region and have become relatively popular, which is a good thing. I can say that we have seen some efficiencies and benefits out of the delegated authority process for undisputed consents, that South Frontenac initially put that in place during the pandemic, and the other 3 townships followed suit from the end of last year into February. So we've been working away with that process for all 3 of the townships that we do the planning services for since about February. In terms of application numbers, so the numbers of files again have been declining since the pandemic. We have found there's a direct correlation between development activity and what's happening in the market, right? So when interest rates are good, people are borrowing, they're buying extra properties, they want to do renovations. All of a sudden, interest rates go up, and we have seen a bit of a decline in terms of the development activity. I can say, so last year we had a total of 108 applications across the 3 townships that we do the planning for. Right now, at the end of September, the end of the 3rd quarter, we had processed 64 applications. So we were at about 60% of last year's volume at the 75% way of the mark of the year. So it might be down a bit. And I can say right now, like I said, about 40% of the applications that we are dealing with are consents that we are doing through the delegated authority process. So we have definitely seen a decrease in the application load on committee and council agendas, and definitely turnaround times that are shorter because people are not waiting for meetings that happen once a month. And I have asked.
I was just gonna comment to that too. I noticed that in South Frontenac now after delegated authority's been in for a while, Committee of Adjustment, which is still a separate committee, which we're struggling with and we're gonna have to look at. They have a meeting now and there's only 3 minor variances. So the purpose of Committee of Adjustment has really changed, and I think we're really gonna have to look at what that means in the future, whether it can just be done at council or whatever. But there's 8 members from the public to council on that committee. They come together for a meeting and we all know what everything costs. And there's 3 minor variances. Fran?
The same thing's happening with us, but what we did was change it. That Committee of Adjustment is now at 5 o'clock and council is at 6. And last night we were finished. We only had 1 minor variance. We were done at 5:15, and then we had to sit and wait till 6 o'clock.
And I won't say we'll go to pre-pandemic numbers, but when everybody was wanting to gear up in COVID at our municipality, I cautioned them to not gear up for COVID numbers because we are coming back down to, I won't say pre yet, but definitely back down to more of a normal than what there was.
True, yeah, and I know in the past you have asked about numbers for South Front, so I have asked the team, I'm hoping to be able to get some application numbers for the last few years for South, in time for the final budget presentation to council to kind of show the difference. I think anecdotally, I feel like South probably processes a similar number to the other three combined. But I will be interested to see those numbers, and if I get them in time, I'm gonna certainly share them at county council. In terms of allocating our resources and implementing the projects, our unknowns, of course, the number of development applications, we never know what's, I mean, we still have the pre-application process, but we don't always know exactly what's going to come in as a formal application until it happens. Over the last few years, we continually are blessed with changes from the province that we've had to respond to. We have a new provincial planning statement coming into effect on October 20th, for instance. So again, we never know what to expect there, but they are things that we have to stop and we have to address them and find room in our work plan to do that work. We have made some changes from a staffing perspective. So earlier this year, County Council approved taking one of our community planner positions and transitioning it to a project manager senior planner position. And so that was filled internally. And because we have seen a slight decline in application numbers and are now getting to spend more time on policy work, that new position and that role will be helping, and has been helping with that right now. So the successful candidate was Dmitry Karlovich, and he is currently managing the community planning permit system for us as well. And he still does some of the day-to-day application work, but we've been able to sort of change our resources in-house to allow capacity for more of that policy work to be done. We are also working right now with the Human Resources Department to try and transition sort of the traditional summer student job we have to a planning internship. We were unsuccessful last year getting a planning intern for our department for the summer, and it was because of the pay. So we are, it's not going to be a huge increase, but we are looking to see what we can do to make it a little bit more competitive. So we're paying the same rate regionally as what other municipalities are paying to make it at least attractive. And it's also a position that while we may still staff it during the summer, it's going to be written in such a way that it could be done at any time during the year for a 16-week period. So there are some schools that, for instance, that have co-op programs such as Waterloo, and they are looking for 16-week internships that don't necessarily coincide from May to August. And that I feel will be beneficial for us if we have somebody who goes on short-term leave for any reason and we need some additional assistance for 3 or 4 months, having the opportunity to use that, because finding a full-time qualified planner for just a 4-month contract is impossible. So having that opportunity to kind of pivot to use that sort of redefined position is going to be really helpful to us in the future. In terms of risk analysis and mitigation, as always, you know, we have had and we have seen that we've had major policy reviews be delayed simply because, you know, we have had a large increase in terms of our workload on the development applications front. But I think now we are seeing the payout from some of the efficiencies through the delegated authority for consent process. And there was only 13% of our time spent in 2023 dedicated to policy work. But it's the first time in a very long time that it went over 10%. So we are starting to gradually see that increase. And I apologize that you can't see it because of where the position of the bar is, but you know, one of the mitigation measures is if there is policy initiative that the townships would like to undertake, if we don't have the time and the capacity to do it, they have the opportunity to hire a consultant. Oh, thank you. I didn't know that was movable. I think they have the opportunity to hire a consultant to be able to assist them. We would prefer to do the work for them ourselves, but again, that is one mitigation measure that is available. Can we go to the next slide, please? It's not letting me change it.
Question then,
Yeah.
oh, no, it went to questions, but I know you're not there. Of course, I have to wear my South Frontenac hat. All of the planning services that you're providing, are they on a total cost recovery?
So the way in which the agreement works, and Mr. McGalvin can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we track all of our hours that we work for the 3 townships. And at the end of each year, we total it up. And then it's that year plus the previous 2 years are used to create an average that is then billed to the township, and they pay the total quarterly throughout the next year. And the reason for doing the average is 1 year, somebody may have an official plan underway and you do an extra 200 hours for them so that they don't have to pay all of that in the subsequent year. It helps spread it over a few years. So we do our best in terms of cost recovery, but we do not bill like a traditional consultant. I'll let Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. So it is 100% cost recovery. So our costs of providing the planning services not only include the salaries of planning staff, but also, you know, the operation of the, like the vehicle maintenance, gas, et cetera, et cetera. So last year with the 3-year average, our billing rate was approximately $130 an hour, which if you think about it, planning consultant, like we've got a bench of planners, some older, some younger. But we got a lot of experience. So that $130 an hour is, I would argue, is a very good value for the municipalities. And then we do things that we know that it may, like the community planning permit system, we know there's technically no county benefit. But we've decided to with working with the townships, we're managing the project because it's going to help all 4 townships. So some of these projects that are happening all 4 township, we don't bill the townships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, thank you, Joe. And I should say, in terms of 100% cost recovery, so for the county side, I can't speak to the township side, right? Because there is work done when we are working with the townships. They are doing administrative work on their side that is of course, is up to them to recover. I can say, though, that one of the things that we did after the delegated authority is we went to the 3 townships that we do the planning services for, and we worked with them to update their fees bylaw, because many of them had fee bylaws that were very much out of date. We did some research and we brought those numbers up again to help with the cost recovery, more so on the township side. So,
Which I think is important, whether it's the planning or whether it was IT or whatever services the municipalities are using outside of the county benefit. It should be cost recovered so that someone else isn't paying for somebody else.
Yeah.
Judy?
Just want to congratulate you on reaching out to the University of Waterloo. I think that'd be a big asset in that, because it does have that co-op flexibility, and the quality of the planning up there, I know, is top notch. So I think that's a good use. Also, I know Wilfrid Laurier rents out their MBA students for special projects at a very reasonable rate. And that should also be something that you consider for if you want to have something targeted, and that you'll get very good quality work out of people that are leaders in industry. They're just getting their paperwork for the MBA.
Thank you for that. Just my last slide here is just with respect to the sustainability reserve for our department. So this reserve was established several years ago and has 2 primary goals. One is to cover the costs of planned studies or regional studies, particularly ones that we do on a regular basis. And it's also there to assist with any appeals that we receive to the Ontario Land Tribunal that the county needs to participate in. It's helped to cover legal costs with respect to that. And I think my last slide has the S at the bottom. You know what? It is fine on every screen except this room. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a PDF.
So do we have any question?
Yeah. So.
No? Okay, the owner?
I just have kind of a comment. When you do your communal services conversation with the townships and you leave them to then address the rest of us, and make those comments, in whether it's a community session that they're giving us an update on what communal services are, I'm sure you provide some kind of a presentation to talking points. And the only reason I say that is because not every council member, but a few have some biases into the community that they've been living in for 30, 40 years. that you probably want to get them on a side of embracing that technology first, so that they can then go forth to share it with others in a positive way.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting negativism,
No,
but
no.
I'm just saying that some people just don't understand it as well as you guys. So when they
Yeah.
take to the township level and they try to drill it down, it may not come out the same.
Okay, no, and I appreciate that. And I think, I mean, we're gonna go out and have an initial conversation with each council. I know South Frontenac is doing their work as part of their official plan. It's the other three that will need to make an amendment. But we're gonna continue to be involved. We're not gonna do just one presentation to council and then turn them loose and say, yeah, let us know what you figure out. We'll make sure we'll come back and we're part of those conversations, and we can provide presentation, background information. We've even talked about how it would be valuable maybe to bring out somebody to do a presentation who actually builds and installs these types of systems, because very often people are asking very technical questions about how the system actually works and the safety of the system, and those people are the better people to answer those questions, so.
And I think it's important if in those communities that you do have a public meeting on
Yeah.
it too.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Because to Leona's point, I mean, we've been listening to it for 7 years or 10 years, and maybe we still don't get all the details of everything.
Mhm.
So it is not that simple just to comprehend, and people might look at it and say, well, I don't want a 50-story apartment building in my community because you're doing these things, right? So I think if you can make it in language that everybody understands quite easily,
yes.
then I think you might take away some of that apprehension or fear.
Yeah.
Judy?
I think it'd also be helpful in that to find out where we are legally in that, for example, putting a communal service up right now, there's still the regulations that are at the Ontario provincial level that are blocking us, correct?
I might have to turn to Mr. Fowler, Mr. Gallivan. I don't think they're blocking us. I think they're just making life more difficult than it needs to be.
To try to answer your question, so one of the breakthroughs we've done, the utility, having been established, is that there's no longer going to be a need for what's called a municipal responsibility agreement, which everywhere else in Ontario you need to do. And it's an agreement between the municipality and the developer, that the developer says, okay, I want to come to your community. I want to build 40, 50 houses, maybe a commercial use. And the planning department says this is a really good idea, the community's supportive, then and this is really, it certainly applies to all 4 of our townships, and it applies to many rural townships in Eastern Ontario. Then their council will say, okay, it's great, but if you're gonna put $1.5 million of infrastructure in the ground, you need to cut us a check for another $1.5 million that we can put in a reserve fund, because municipal responsibility agreement requires the municipality to take the system over if the developer goes bankrupt or something fails and they're not able. The utility now will cover that risk. That is huge, because they don't need to go to each individual township and have that financial risk built in. They can start to plan for the development out of the gate, knowing that they're not going to have to do that. There are 2 approvals, environmental approvals, that are going to be required for every single development on communal services. One is from the Ministry of the Environment, and it's an environmental assessment. The rules are really clear, but the process can take very long, and there is no guarantees from the ministry when the end date will happen. So in the case of Verona right now, they have hired an engineering firm to do that environmental assessment, and they're two years out, and they still haven't got approval. Then on the other side of the coin, you've got the conservation areas have source protection plans for drinking water. And any well or water taking from a water body that is going to be used for a municipal system has to have an amendment to the source protection plan before it can happen. So you've got 2 different approval process, 2 different streams, 2 different groups of people looking at the approval. And our argument has been in plain language. Look, General Motors designs a new truck and they send it to Transport Canada. Transport Canada does its crash tests and its energy efficiency and all those things. And they say your truck's good to go. they go back to Oshawa and they can roll thousands of those trucks off the line. If you looked at Sonia's presentation, that new Terra box is one of a number of systems that the utility's looking at. That's already been approved by the ministry. They know it works really well. Why do we need to go through a 2 to 3 year process every single time? So having said all that, we've got political leaders working and lobbying with the province. The Minister of Municipal Affairs has heard us. The Minister of Environment has heard us. We've got a local MPP that is working closely with us because it's MPP Jordan. I'll say his name because he has gone a long way in understanding what this will do across rural Ontario. And we're hoping to meet with ministry staff before the end of the year, face to face, the experts we have at the utility to say, here's what we're doing. And here's why you need to change the process to recognize that we're going to have a system in place that's going to be publicly owned. And these systems are going to be publicly managed. They're not, if there's a problem, they're going to be fixed very quickly. That's not on the radar with the province right now because it's brand new. Nobody else has done this, but we're going to work hard to convince them to change those rules.
On that note too, though, MPP Jordan said they can do red tape or private members' bills. They put them all together one time a year, and this streamlining the process is going into that bill is what they told us. So they're gonna try to see if they can get that approved.
Okay, just for clarification, that if the utility takes it over instead of the township asking for that funds, is the utility getting those funds? Because with running a utility, you can only do so much with your charges and a small amount towards reserves and that. And already we're funding the utility people. So I'd like to know where the money goes and where is it coming so that it's not a collapse, because it's one thing to have it put in place, and it's another thing not to have enough reserves there if shit happens. Sorry.
So, yeah, just sorry thank you for asking the question so I can clarify for you. There will be no need for a municipal responsibility agreement. So the utility won't be asking for any financial securities. Because the assumption is the experts in the utility will be sitting at the table with the developer right at the beginning. And this happens, for example, in the city of Kingston, when a developer comes in and says, I want to build this, they'll say, okay, you have to put this diameter of pipes in. We want the communal boxes to be designed like this. The utility right now, the group is working on trying to decide what 2 or 3 or 4 of those boxes that they would say, this is our preferred list, pick one of these and we're good to go. So there won't be a need for any financial investment by the developer at the outset. And that is big.
Okay, any other questions or something? Seeing none, we're gonna take 5 minutes because we do have the K and P trail. It looks like we're almost done, but we're not.
I have one project proposal, but it's probably the shortest presentation I've ever done, so. I can go now or later, it's totally fine.
Go ahead. We'll sit here and go. No.
I'll talk now, but Brianna's getting the slides up. But no, this project proposal, as I mentioned, is going to be specifically for the population, housing and employment projections. Thank you, Brianna. So as a bit of background, the countywide projections were last completed in 2019 and 2020 using the 2016 census data. They cover population growth, they cover housing numbers, as well as employment for the region. And with our study, we look at both permanent and seasonal projections in each township. And this here is just an example from the last study that was done that was showing the allocation of both permanent and seasonal population growth by township over the course of a 30-year period from 2016 to 2046. So the rationale for doing this. So the projections are really a foundation piece for us in terms of community planning and economic development. So ideally, they should be updated every 5 years to coincide with the census data. The last budget request was in 2018 with the final report completed in January of 2020. So now we have had the 2021 census data, we have updated data, and we know that we have had significant changes in growth, building numbers, consumer habits ever since the pandemic occurred. So in terms of the proposed cost and timing, the project would start before the end of 2025. We are looking at a cost estimate of about $45,000. The last time it was around 40,000. Obviously, you know, prices for everything have gone up, so we're trying to build in a bit of that buffer. And we are proposing to take that money from the sustainability reserve that I just spoke to. I will note that we do know that South Frontenac recently updated their projections for their development charges study and bylaw. And so we are hopeful that the consultant we hire is able to use that data, which will diminish the amount of work that they have to do from scratch. We get to share the numbers.
You'll contribute something back. No, just kidding.
We always do. We always do. So we are hopeful that we can say we have some updated numbers for South Frontenac and that those numbers can be used and therefore somebody is not going back and redoing that specific group of numbers. So we're hopeful that, you know, we won't even need the full 45,000, but the proposal is to take it from the sustainability reserve, which we have set aside and have sufficient funds for that project. So happy to take any questions.
Those are always easier when they say they're coming out of a reserve.
Yes.
But if there are any questions or comments on that? Judy?
Just said, what if if we used a different company, would they come up with a whole different set of numbers for South Frontenac?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I think I would say, I mean, ultimately, when a municipality hires a consultant to do the work, the work is owned by the client. So even if we hired a different company than what South Frontenac used, South Frontenac is the owner of their numbers and their data. So we would be able to get it to, yeah, so they would be able to feed those in.
Fran?
If we're using census data, which we know is not accurate, then any other census is probably much more accurate than where we're starting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we'll take 5 minutes. gonna,
Did everybody see that?
but we'll never mention it again.
Wow. I thought it was my arm and not my face. No, and no comments to that. Okay, good. Let's move
It's
on.
worse though when you do it in a store and then you turn around and apologize for bumping into them.
We've all done it. Oh my God, that was funny. Everybody see him?
All right, I told you I'd be
Frontenac.
back.
KMP Trail.
Thank you, committee and members of the committee for talking to me about the KMP Trail. One of the things that I hate to contradict my director, but I'm going to, is maybe I love to, but he said that the trail will be done. And I want to be clear that like construction of the physical infrastructure of the trail will be done. I mean, I hope. We got some things to figure out, but the economic development side of the project is really just starting to build up. And that work is, finding accommodations along the trail, ensuring that we're getting more visitors on the trail, building out that economic infrastructure along the trail. And that's really the message that you're going to start hearing me talk a lot about. I'm going to talk a lot less about gravel and a lot more about about people and businesses along the trail, which is ultimately what the vision was for this in the beginning. And so while, we have 78 kilometers of trail by the end of this year in operation, and another 12 to get us to the edge of Lanark, we still have a vision of building something on Wolf Island. We still have a vision of continuing to use trails as a form of economic as an economic stimulus in our community. And so it's not just the KMP trail, it's trails, and it's also about connectivity and connections as we go forward.
Can I just ask a quick question? What's holed up at Fish Creek? At Fish Creek Road or whatever, where we still have to go around? There's a section there that's been like that for a long time. Is it property? Yes. Okay.
Prior to my time, there was a discussion amongst the Trails Committee that there was a nesting area for endangered species of rat snake and turtles along Duncan Lake, where the trail moves along from Fish Creek. And since it was easy enough to set up a motorized detour in the summer months, it was decided that would be the case. So so that's been the case since I don't know, 2014, 2015. And now it's an established area where people go to walk and not have encounter motorized vehicles. And so it would be a big public consultation campaign to change that.
So it's permanently generally going to stay the way it is. That's all I wanted to know, because I didn't know why it's been closed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say that. I mean, council can direct us to do whatever council wants, but we might be a can of worms.
Fran might not want that fight just now.
Can of snakes. Yeah.
Fred.
Councillor Fowler, yeah.
How long is it, what I'm trying to say is, has anybody studied the area to find out if these rat snakes and that are still in the area?
I haven't seen a study, no.
Somebody said
we've got 70 kilometers of trail that we manage and maintain. We own 78. We're currently constructing and rehabilitating 8 kilometers of trail from Clarendon Station to the Mississippi. That should be done by the end of the month. Looks great. 63 of those kilometers are available for motorized use during the summer months. All of the KMP trail is available for motorized use during the winter months. At the moment, we don't require any permits or passes for any use on the trail except for snowmobile, which is a requirement of the province for snowmobile trails. And it's estimated that we had 197, just over 197,000 visits to the trail in 2023. Yes.
Yeah, regarding the passes, I heard there was somebody was saying that you had to have a pass to go from Clareton Station up to the border with the Lanark. That came from one of the local ATV clubs. Is it going to remain no passes?
We'll be bringing that to committee for conversation in November. So so look forward to that conversation. We're the only trail that doesn't require motorized passes in Eastern Ontario. So we're unique in that factor.
So if you're thinking about that, think ahead then, because I'm also gonna push then that these motorized bicycles will have to have a pass. Why should they get off scot-free?
I've got like 7 steps on there, and we can talk about all of those things. And that's the fun for committee and council, and I just provide you with some information. So sounds like that we've got some exciting discussions ahead for economic development in trails. And we know, because I have 10 counters out there that can tell me essentially if an ATV is going by, a bicycle is going by, or a pedestrian's going by. And we know in general, across the whole network, it's split, but it's generally an even split, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. We get more pedestrian use further south, and we get more motorized use further north. But cycling has been expanding its presence on the trail over the past few years, and we see a steady increase as they discover new sections of the trail further north. We have other uses out there. We've got mini horses that I don't know, is that motorized? They pull mini horses that pull wheeled trailers on the trail. We've got horses. We've got scooters. We've got electric bicycles. We've got cross-country skiers. I've seen dog sled teams out there. And I think one of the most interesting things about trails is that now, one of the most exciting and weird things is that now more than ever, it's getting harder and harder to just say this thing that somebody's doing on the trail fits in a box. Because even when it comes to ATVs, when I think of an ATV, I think of a 4-wheeler that fits 1, maybe 2 people, but ATVs now can be 72 inches wide, which is wider than most of the vehicles we have in our fleet in Frontenac County, and it gets a little bit more dicey than some of the smaller side-by-sides and ATVs out there. So what are appropriate uses? What are appropriate recreational uses? What are appropriate and when we talk about motorized use with bicycles and e-bikes, what is the difference? In the EU, they've I'm getting off topic, but I just came off a World Trails Conference last week. So in the EU, they don't allow the e-bikes that have throttles. They call that makes it a motorized vehicle. And so that's where they draw the line. But in Ontario, we don't have that yet. So we don't know. Anyway,
I know
basically,
you're gonna discuss it again too, but I did just take the trail all the way to Wheeler's Pancake House.
yeah,
I go on the trail twice a year. If they tell me I gotta spend $150 to get on it for twice a year, I would have to think seriously, right?
yeah.
So then I don't know how many people you will lose either, because I can take the road everywhere too.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my rationale on what would I pay to use it once or twice a year.
Exactly. We have made some accomplishments this year. So we've continued to reacquire the former railway corridor in North Frontenac to achieve, and we've actually begun construction in North Frontenac, long awaited construction in North Frontenac and rehabilitation. And so now the trail traverses 3 of our 4 townships. And we were able to this year add it to Google Street View. So from Orser Road to Clarendon Station, you can see any section of the trail like this picture here on Google using the Street View, where you can drag the little person over, and you can see a 360 view at any point in the trail. There's a couple of gaps, and we found out that it wasn't really cell reception. It was because of the tree coverage. We couldn't see the satellites to get the GPS coordinates. And so we're going to go back out when the foliage is down and try to fill those gaps. But for the most part, we've got about 95% of that trail out there. We did this because we learned that accessibility groups use this tool on a regular basis to see if infrastructure is appropriate for how they get out there and use trails or other infrastructure. So, but it's also, I think, a great tourism marketing tool that was easy enough to do with our summer student this year. Our partners at the Frontenac ATV Club have trained 12 wardens, and those wardens have been out patrolling the trail, communicating with trail users every weekend this year. They send me a report every Monday or Tuesday after the weekend about what they've seen, what's out there. It's been an incredible evolution of our relationship, and it really has eyes on the trail on the busiest days of the week, which are Saturday and Sunday. And so their presence has been there. There's been an increase of formal events, again, most of them led by that club. You were at an event last weekend on the way to Wheelers. They were out to Calabogie 2 weeks before. And the ATV Club actually helped us take a few international delegates from the World Trails Conference out on the KMP Trail from Verona to Mississippi Station 2 weeks ago. And so we were able to show off our trail to folks from Belgium, Portugal, Brazil, and some places in the States. So it was really exciting to be able to do that. And that was related.
Did you impress them?
What's that?
Were they impressed?
They were impressed, but most of them had never been in an ATV before, and so they were definitely confused about bicycles and ATVs on the same trail. And so that they were like, okay, this is working, okay, but it's new for us, and so it's a very different situation for them. And some of their comments and feedback will be in the market readiness assessment that we'll be bringing to this committee in the new year. The market readiness assessment looks at the KMP Trail, the Cataraqui Trail, the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail, and the Algonquin Trail. It's a 360-kilometer loop that goes, I think actually I have a slide right here about it, that goes through 4 counties, and we have a number of partners working on this project to bring all those trails together and look at marketing that loop as an international cycling product, mostly because it's easier to put your bicycle on an airplane than your ATV. But the other piece is that we see it as a great way to like work together to bring trail products together. And so that assessment and the feedback from that assessment will be shared with the various municipalities in the new year. Yeah.
Just a question about Cataraqui Trail is not open to motorized. How are you going to address that in the future?
So as we said, we're going to position all 4 trails as the loop as a cycling experience. So we can't address the governance of the Cataraqui Trail. It's something that's owned and operated by Cataraqui Conservation, and they have a great group of the Friends of the Cataraqui Trail who are there. So the decisions aren't really to be made by us unless we decide we want to acquire that trail too, I guess. But yeah, no, the empire grows. But we really think that working collaboration, it's been an incredible experience. It's been a year since the idea started. This assessments come together, fundings come in to support the assessment and some of the work around it. This is going to be real economic development work. We're going to be looking at tying businesses all around the loop on the trail, doing some of the work that we used to do with ambassadors in Frontenac, that we still do with ambassadors in Frontenac, but on a larger scale, where you might have a number of accommodators on this loop work together to move luggage from one place to the next, or to do a group booking over the course of a week 1 or 2 nights in each location so that you can do package sales and somebody can just say, okay, I'm staying 2 nights in Charlotte Lake at the B&B there, and then I'm staying a night in Calabogie and a night in Pakenham and a night in Smiths Falls, and all of the accommodators are working together. Those are the kind of visions that we're sort of seeing over time for this loop from an economic development and tourism perspective. There is work to be done, and that will be all laid out in the assessment too, but it will the focus is really on this idea of the economy. While there is still attention to infrastructure like signage and things. We're at Frontenac County, we're good on signage because I chase it. I've already talked a bit about the development right now in North Frontenac between Clarendon Station and the Mississippi River. That work is underway. It's going quite well, fairly smoothly. I just want to say we got some support from this project from the Rural Economic Development Program, and that project came together with partnerships from the Ottawa Valley ATV Club, the Frontenac ATV Club, the Kick and Push Brewery put some funds into it, the Charlotte Lake Business Group put some funds into it, Clarendon Station Accommodation put some funds into it, and we actually had a private donation from somebody who wished to remain anonymous, but it was $3,000, which was insignificant. So the community really came together to see this project continue, and so it shows that it has meaning to our various partners across the area. Here's a list of a few of the events that we've seen. This is one of the ways that we're tracking our economic impact of the trail. And as you can see there, most of those events are ATV events. We'd like to see some more cycling and other kinds of events grow in there, but the ATV Club Ride to Wheelers is what you see in the drone photo there. And you can see that there's a significant economic impact. Were you there in the this was in the May one? Yeah, so you're I don't know if they flew the drone last week. Yeah, so they haven't sent me that photo yet. So yeah, and the same goes for the Kick and Push Century Ride. So folks come to Charlotte Lake. They base it out of a business. They had I think 75 participants in. So a Century Ride is a 100-kilometer bicycle ride, and they had one of the challenges was the connection to the Kick and Push Brewery where they host it. To the trail has been closed because of land access issues, and so but they were able to launch the event from the railway park in Charlotte Lake and then do the awards at the brewery and make it all work out.
We went 180 kilometers on Sunday, and my wife and I was about $45 at Wheelers, and there was 100 people.
Yeah.
So they didn't mind us showing up.
No, they don't. It's certainly a destination, and we're hoping as we improve the trail through North Frontenac and the connection between Calabogie and Frontenac County that we see some of that happening in our direction too. And I've certainly in Charlotte Lake met groups that have come south from Renfrew to Charlotte Lake or Verona. And you see it when they're parked at Muddy Waters or outside Belong in Charlotte Lake. So we're seeing an economic impact, and if you ask the business owners, it's certainly a welcome one. Trail use data, I have some just some basic data for your information here. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to take it. All of this paints us a picture. I don't know if we want to rely deeply on the precision of the data, but we know in general our physical counts, the physical counts don't catch everybody because there's so many ways to get on our trail. So I can't have a counter at every entrance, or I'd have to have 37 counters, and then collecting the data and analyzing it would be too much. So our counter network is spread out across the trail region, and the mobile data can kind of tell us a bit more about overall visits, but also about number of people where they're coming from. And that's where the value of the mobile data is for us, is understanding that more people are coming here. next year, we're going to be running a survey on the trail to round out some of the estimates that I have in the economic impact. So we're using survey data from 2020 and using count data, we were able to sort of put together a model that of what that economic impact might be. So we used some data on what an average day trip spend might be from Moto Canada and average cycling trip might be from Ontario by Bike. We took our physical count data and we said, okay, well, an ATV, if it's going to go from Verona to Clarendon on a day trip, it's going to pass through 6 counters one way and 6 counters the other way. So I take my total ATV counts and I divide it by 12 to create my model, essentially. And with a cyclist, I bring it down a little bit. A cyclist on a day trip might do somewhere between 30 and 40 kilometers, so they might go through 6 counters. And so that's how we put the model together to estimate the economic impact of our trail users.
Okay. When I was going through this and that, and I saw the Ontario bike data and that, I forwarded on a link to you regarding the bike data, because in their report from 2021 to 2022, it's $101 to $150 a day for cyclists.
For a weekend trip, yes.
Yeah, yeah, for more than just the day trip type of thing. And I wondered where you came up with the $26 was only mentioned for food, I think, in their report, and that it certainly isn't the whole economic impact. And cycling is very lucrative in that. But when you were also mentioning the data use in the trails and that, it's been steadily going down. And that there's only one figure that shows number of tourists per 100 kilometers. I couldn't figure out how the 100 kilometers factored in. That's the only figure that was up from 2021, 2022.
So first of all, so in terms of your first question, this data was on day trip data that was shared by Ontario by Bike in 2023. And same with the day trip data for ATVs and side by side. So the overnight trips I didn't factor in because we don't have a lot of roofed accommodations and we don't have clear understanding of what percentage of our cyclists are doing an overnight trip in Frontenac County and ATV. So I use the day trip data from both sources to put this together. Overnight trips are where the win is in terms of economic impact. 100%. That's where we start to see go like $150 a day on average, because they're paying for accommodations, meals, going to other places. There is a significant opportunity for gravel cyclists to be moved on, and we're looking at ways to do that with our rail trail loop project. In terms of the data here, I mean I can't explain the methodology of the mobile data, but perhaps I can have the Propulso, who provides that information, do a presentation to the community. I get a report from them once a year, and it lays out this information. Usually it lays it out in terms of percentages, so I run the percentages based on the total visits. The physical count data, so 2023, I can factor in some of why that data is lower. We had 2 counters go out of service for about 4 or 5 months in 2023. Also, one of the challenges with our data sometimes is that it gets really skewed in the winter, because a snowmobile weekend will do as much as a month as the month of May for everybody in terms of counts.
Obviously, there was snow February 5th and January 22nd
That's
for those
right.
2 years.
Right, so yeah, so it's and the other piece is that we have our whole counter network is opened up to motorized counts, where so all 10 counters take motorized counts in the winter months, because we're open to trails there. So we're working on refining our process of modeling and taking this information, and We'll be spending a lot of time working on that as we combine it with survey data in 2025. So I spoke about the survey, which is one of our planned trail economy projects. Also, trail etiquette is something that we're looking at doing. So that's a public, it's a campaign where we'll be encouraging people to yield to others, to let faster vehicles go by or faster users go by, and work together, wave, smile, and work together. There are really are some challenges between user groups, but ultimately our numbers aren't big enough on our trail right now. Our volume isn't big enough for us to be able to say we shouldn't have this user group or we shouldn't allow this user group. We really need to continue to work on extending the relationships across our user groups. And the ATV Club, for example, the Kick and Push Century Ride, the ATV Club provided wardening and supported road crossings to make sure that people were doing safety. So when we have more of that interaction between user groups, the more people become about trails and less about how they use the trails. And that's really what we want to continue to do. In terms of the rail trail loop, I had the assessment, we'll lay out, when we bring the assessment forward, we'll lay out all of that work. But in 2025, we're planning to engage the business community and local leaders about trail towns. And that's how do trail towns located on or near trails capitalize on the fact that they are located on or near trails? And how do they make that decision to say, we have a trail and we embrace it and love it and want it to be part of our culture? There'll be some branding and marketing led mostly through Ontario Highlands, which is our tourism operator who and partner on this project. And then there'll be a bit of a joint management plan, which will set out principles across all 4 trails for us to follow. Policies, so we talked about uses, land uses with Sonia earlier. So one of the types of policies that we want to look at is for large tracts of property that are adjacent to the trail, being able to potentially provide small scale accommodation or other types of amenities that might be able to benefit the landowner for being adjacent to the trail, but also benefit the trail user in a win-win situation. And so one of the things that we don't have in Frontenac County is enough places to sleep along or near our trails. And then one of the other policies is acquisition of adjacent lands, not pursuing the acquisition of adjacent lands, but there are orphan parcels that come up adjacent to the trail. And sometimes people think that the trail is a road and that they can then develop a full-scale subdivision off of the trail, and the trail is not that good of an infrastructure to support that kind of development. But there are smaller parcels too that are maybe have environmental or amenity values that we maybe come up in a tax sale that might be worth considering and evaluating as an organization for acquisition. And some people might just try to give them to us. And I have one unsolicited donation that has sort of prompted the consideration of what do we do when someone says, I've got land I'd like to give you. And I, well, it's not, I wish it was that easy, but yeah, or, you know, do we want another gas station or something like that, right? So we have to have some framework for considering those decisions and bring our recommendations forward. So those are the kinds of policies you'll see come forward in 2025 around the expansion of the trail as an economic engine, really. Capital projects, I just want to point out, we're expecting that it'll cost us another $800,000 to complete the next 12 kilometers of trail between the Mississippi River and the county boundary with Lanark. We don't have that much money in our bank account to make that happen, and so even with grants, it might be close. And then we have a number of bridges that we already have in our network that have some pressing capital needs. So we're gonna have some conversations with council about what are we gonna do about capital and revenue around trails and prioritizing those projects.
Wasn't there a portion of our gas tax allocation toward the
So-
building of the trail?
So up until, I think it's 2015, we used the gas tax for trails and a number of economic development projects. The CIPs were all funded that way. After that, the gas tax, or what's now called the CCBF, the Canadian Community Building Fund, is flowed from the county directly to the townships. And so we just took, so there were two one-time doublings in 2019 and 2021 from the federal government, and we took that extra money and put it in reserve for building these projects. And so we've almost gone through that extra money, but we don't have a replenishing factor in that reserve for those projects. And so we either have to reevaluate how much of the CCBF goes to the townships, which probably is not a good conversation to have, or look at other revenue models. And so we want to highlight that this is on the table and coming, and we have to think through how we're going to manage this capital.
It's not a good conversation to have, except if you said, if you're looking at ideas, if you said, if municipalities would agree to take 1% of their before you get it, then that feels different, right?
That's
So
right.
Some of
Perhaps-
those there you might want to think about.
Perhaps there's in the CCBF, there's a percentage that could be maintained by the county, and everybody still gets a significant benefit from the flow through. We understand that money is very useful.
And then there are others that would say, let the users pay.
Right, and it may be a combination of all of the above, right? So, that's why we're looking at a number of different ways to generate revenue. And actually, in our trails assessment, there's a few more ideas that we can consider as we grow that product.
Judy?
Just looking at the bridge repairs and replacements and that, there's already been a replacement done of a bridge that didn't last, that was
Mhm.
anticipated to last. Do they all have to be, are we looking towards making them metal all the way along? And that, because it is an asset that we have, and I'm thinking, I brought information to the local MP and MPP and that on a company, and that's primarily how we ended up with the LaSalle Causeway getting swapped out. And it's a company that on low volume, the bridges last 75 years or low volume, you get 100 years plus, and high volume, 75 years. So I'm looking at this from a long-term perspective, and that we should never, if we put a bridge in, it should be lasting over 100 years.
Agreed. That's where we got a bit, we were working at Elbow Creek, with the bridge we replaced there last year. We had a new form of bridge construction that we were using that was more cost effective. The bridge itself is actually the most affordable part of replacing a bridge. The Elbow Creek Bridge was $70,000, but the project was $400,000. And so it's abutments, the condition of abutments, and maintenance of those things. Of these 5 bridges that I've identified, 3 of them have been just brought into our network as part of the acquisition of in North Frontenac. These are 3 bridges that have just been assessed for the first time, and the work has just been identified for the first time. So they're sort of almost new bridges that need attention for us. Where Fish Creek is some repointing, which isn't that expensive, and Hardwood Creek has a bit of other stuff, a bit of urgent work, but isn't expensive. It's really these bridges that haven't been properly assessed and maintained for many years, but have been in use for many years in the trail network prior to our involvement. And so that's it's just the assumption of those liabilities that we have to look at and plan for. So liabilities. Oh, great, guys. Liability on recreational trails is not really an if, it's a when. And so the key piece is to make sure that we're reviewing all of our high-risk situations and assess them for improvement. We have, when it comes to recreational trails, the onus is on the user, but if you have policies for maintenance and management, you have to adhere to those. And if you don't adhere to those policies for maintenance and management, then if something were to happen to somebody and it was proven that you didn't conduct your monthly assessment of the trail or something, then you could be held liable. And so those are the things that we work to fulfill at a reasonable level. We don't set standards that are too high for us to maintain. And we work with our partners at the ATV Club, for example, to help us ensure that we're completing those assessments and managing those liabilities. So it's a continuous piece that we have to constantly be aware of. We haven't had too much to deal with in terms of liability yet, but one day we will, and we will have to make sure that we continue to be vigilant about that. Any other questions or discussion around the KMP Trail Business Plan?
Going back to that liability aspect and that, we still don't have an established speed limit of 40 kilometers or anything of that nature on the trail, correct?
We have posted limits on the trail throughout the trail, specifically on the motorized section. So what we're
What
like,
speed?
so we have 20 kilometers an hour in certain zones where we're close to receptors,
Yep.
and then it was 50 kilometers an hour elsewhere. And more.
And no mechanism for enforcing it. The OPP indicated they wouldn't lay charges. We'd have to do it under bylaw. Is that correct?
So the OPP should be able to enforce if the speeds are posted. And so
They told us they wouldn't.
They mostly tend to enforce on helmets, license, registration. They tend to get people at road crossings, that sort of thing, but they can enforce it if they'd like to. The thing actually with speed limits is that we're likely going to have to place them in the non-motorized sections as well because of e-bikes, and because we're seeing speeds of 30 to even 40 kilometers an hour from those.
I was gonna say, it's posted at 50 and that's all you wanna do though.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
really is.
It-
I mean, there's always gonna be some outlier that's
The-
gonna,
For the most part, when we took our delegates from the World Trails Conference out, we went 30 kilometers an hour when we were outside of regular zones, and that was comfortable. You could still see things. And then if you start speeding up, it gets bumpier, and it's not about where you're going. It's really about getting somewhere quickly.
Yeah, I thought last year when we had the OPP here as a delegation, that they made the point that because it is owned by us, the KMP Trail, it's not a highway, that they wouldn't be charging.
So they're able to charge if we have posted speed limits and a bylaw that covers that. So, and we have a bylaw, yeah. Bylaw manager over there, just, all right, that's it for me. Any other questions? Thank you for bearing with me and for all of your engaging and interesting questions and comments.
okay. Are you reading it or am I reading it? Oh. Hmm? Francis and Leona.
So that's moved by Warden Smith and seconded by Ms. Fleischman. That the County of Frontenac Planning and Economic Development Advisory Committee recommend to County Council the approval of the Planning and Economic Development 2025-2029 Business Plan, and further that the Director of Planning and Economic Development provide an overview to County Council as part of the 2025 budget deliberations, as well as the councils of the 3 municipalities which the department provides planning services.
Any other comments? Just don't shoot council when it gets there. I understand it's going there. Just don't. when it gets there. If there are no other questions or comments, all in favor? Carried. There's communications. I don't know if anybody has a question on it or comment. None? Other business? Seeing none, the next meeting will not be November the 6th, so I guess at the call of you or who? I will tell you though that Richard won't get 2 hours at budget. Just so we're clear, before your expectations get too high.
Hopefully the questions got out of the way here today.
Well, Joe's gonna answer, I guess. He's,
We'll get back to you. I know Richard has a number of reports. I don't know the timeliness of it, but we will let the committee know before the end of the week. Thank you.
so we'll leave the next day to be determined, depending on what the work is. Fair enough? All those in favor of adjournment? Carried. Thank you.